Good evening and welcome to Dead Sleep True Crime for Bedtime. I'm Nancy Miller, the creator of this podcast, and what you are about to hear is a short teaser for the latest bonus episode. As you may or may not know, Dead Sleep is 100% ad-free and listener-supported. That means it really does rely on you, the listener, to succeed. If you would like to ensure the success of this podcast and enjoy a subscriber-only bonus episode each month, please feel free to subscribe via Spotify, Patreon, and Apple Podcasts. Just a few dollars a month really does make a difference in covering the essential production costs in making this podcast. Thank you for supporting my work, and I hope my work supports you. You can enjoy a free month on Apple Podcasts and a free 7-day trial on Patreon. Thank you. And now, on to the teaser of the latest bonus episode. Hi, everybody, and a very pleasant good evening to you wherever you may be. This is the October 2025 bonus episode of Dead Sleep True Crime for Bedtime. Thank you so much for supporting this podcast. One of the features of being a subscriber is that we do not need to go through the tedious preamble of me asking anyone for money, because you are already supporting this listener-supported show. Thank you for getting that, and thank you for supporting this podcast. As we settle in for the night, a question to ponder. What is the most relaxing sound you can imagine? Maybe it's soothing ocean waves lapping along a distant shore. Or perhaps it is the sound of rain rhythmically tapping on a windowsill, lulling us to sleep. This week, that is, the final week of October in 2025, there is a soothing and calming sound, one that is incomparable to anything else I can think of in this whole wide world. That is the sound of a bat hitting a baseball, and that baseball soaring way across a ballpark, far off, even past the stadium seats, disappearing off into the sunset and into a crisp, cool autumn night. For millions of fans, baseball is their happy place, especially right now during the World Series. The Blue Jays versus the Dodgers. And yes, baseball can be nerve-wracking. But that sound, it's one of the most glorious and satisfying, especially for a young man named Juan Catalan, who is at the center of tonight's episode. For Juan, baseball, specifically the LA Dodgers, well, they were his happy place. A baseball game at Dodger Stadium as the sun set. It was closer to God than being at church. And in this episode, you are going to hear how a series of complicated circumstances led to young Juan being accused of a murder he didn't commit. And it would be up to the Dodgers, his favorite team, to try and save his life. Now, this story is actually part of a very famous documentary, one that came out in 2017 called The Long Shot. It's a very famous documentary, and it's been told and retold on plenty of podcasts, but just recently I discovered that the man at the center of the story, his name is Juan Catalan. He wrote a memoir. It's called Played, just published in September of 2025. And it took him a long time to write for reasons you'll understand later in the episode. So even if you've seen that documentary Long Shot that was on Netflix back in 2017, there are all kinds of interesting details that tell a far richer story Whether or not you care about baseball, it doesn't really matter to enjoy this episode. But it's worth noting that true crime and baseball do share something in common. True crime storytelling and baseball. It all comes down to the little things. Little details, missteps, decisions, deceptions. Things that seem of little consequence perhaps in the moment will later make the difference between life and death, triumph, or tragedy. And to understand, really understand this story, we don't start in 2025 when the memoir was published, or even 2003 when a series of murders would be the catalyst for this whole saga, but even earlier than that, all the way back to 1988. A football field at a local high school in an area of Los Angeles County called North Hollywood. Right, so we hear the word Hollywood, we think movie studios, red carpet premieres, and celebrity glamour. But North Hollywood, it's a little different. North Hollywood is part of Los Angeles County, but it's actually located over the hill. That's over the Santa Monica Mountains and in San Fernando Valley. North Hollywood is an eclectic neighborhood with bungalow homes in a former industrial area that's now a thriving arts district. But back in 1988, that area, along with a neighborhood called Sun Valley, was the home of a unique new gang known as the Vineland Boys. The Vineland Boys, Vineland, and that's boys with a Z. And they really were boys. Kids in their early teens who named themselves after the street, that's Vineland Street, where they liked to play football. The leader of this gang was a 9th grader named Teddy Green Eyes Lopez. And Green Eyes, along with roughly a dozen other kids, including his brother, they decided they were going to do things differently than the other local gangs, of which there were many, in Los Angeles in the late 1980s. There were the famous ones, of course, the Crips, the Bloods, the Latin Kings, MS-13. But the Vineland Boys, they were going to be an undetectable underground street gang. And they did this by doing something very simple. They didn't look like gang members. In Los Angeles, that meant forgoing some key signifiers that told everyone around you that you were in a gang. They did not have visible tattoos. They did not wear crisp white t-shirts, oversized shorts, and tube socks pulled up to their knees. No, instead, they camouflaged themselves. They looked like high school students, even college students, and were known to intentionally dress nerdy, wearing fake glasses, and carrying books and backpacks. But from the very first year the gang formed, they were a threat to police. This included a high-profile murder of a 26-year-old cop only 72 days into the job, when he was gunned down by a 16-year-old member of the Vineland Boys, who was later killed by police at the scene. What was most shocking for anyone following the news was just how young everyone was. Members of the Boys, they were not even 16, rarely older than 25. And there was always conflict, a never-ending cycle of tit-for-tat skirmishes and neighborhood turf wars in this largely Latino area. Just one small part of what was once called Alta California, and part of a larger territory once owned by Mexico back in the early 1800s. And the pride in their Mexican heritage ran deep. So did something else, a shared passion for Dodger baseball. In 1988, the Dodgers won the World Series, and by then, the city of LA was still in the throes of Fernando Mania, a rapturous devotion to a Mexican-born pitcher named Fernando Valenzuela. And after years of conflict and strife over the building of Dodger Stadium decades earlier that deeply affected the Latino community, baseball historians credit Fernando Valenzuela for bringing a whole new generation of fans to baseball. And in 1988, this included a little boy named Juan Catalan. At just 9 years old, Juan already was a Dodger fan. He loved all sports, but baseball was his favorite. In photos, there's a proudly beaming Juan in what looks like a Dodgers-style Little League uniform. But even as a young kid, Juan struggled with crippling anxiety. He already struggled with being bullied for being poor, for having a lisp, and looked to his older brother Mario for guidance. Mario was the opposite of Juan. He was a daredevil, just a little bit older, and was already dabbling in drug dealing and other gang activity, stealing cars, and later selling methamphetamine. And within a few years, young Juan, he also went from hitting baseballs to stealing stuff. The good news, it seems, was that Juan was no criminal mastermind. He always got caught, which is one of the reasons why he gave up on gang life before he even really started. He just didn't have the nerves. And he might have inherited some of it from his mother, who suffered from severe anxiety, agoraphobia, a fear of heights. All of it made worse by the fact that she grew up in a small town with just a second-grade education and felt overwhelmed at times by the sheer scale of Los Angeles. But what would really save Juan was love. By the 1990s, when Juan was in high school, he met Alma, the love of his life. And soon enough, Alma was pregnant, and Juan, who had never been a good student, dropped out of high school to support his little family. And for many young men, maybe having a kid at 17 or 18 would feel like one's life was ending. But for Juan, it felt like a new beginning when he held his daughter, Melissa, in his arms when she was born. He fell in love with her completely. He decided right then and there he was going to be the best father he could. He was going to give her a stable life and take care of his family. It was, by comparison with his brother, a less exciting life. And Juan was always struggling to pay the bills. And time, well, it passed fast. By 2003, Juan was 24 years old, with 2 little girls, Melissa and Mariah, along with a steady job working at his father's machine shop. But his brother, unfortunately, he wasn't as settled or as level-headed. In the spring of 2003, his brother Mario, he was incarcerated, in jail, on some serious charges. Accused of taking part in 2 cold-blooded killings that happened just 4 days apart. Mario's alleged co-conspirator, believed to be the actual shooter, was a 19-year-old named Jose Ledesma, who everyone knew as Peps. Police believed it was Peps who did the actual shooting of 2 different individuals. But it was Mario who drove the getaway car all the way down to Mexico, where it seemed Mario, Peps, and Mario's girlfriend had planned to disappear. But it didn't work out that way. And within days, by early December, both Mario and Peps were in custody, biding their time at the county jail called Twin Towers in downtown Los Angeles, as this double murder case made its way through the criminal justice system. Mario's bail was set at over $1 million, money that Juan knew his family didn't have. Juan didn't know the full story, but of course he was on his brother's side. Loyalty was everything. And no matter what, he was going to help his brother Mario. In the spring of 2003, Mario was due in court for a preliminary hearing. And this court date was important because this preliminary hearing would determine if there was enough evidence to move forward with a trial. Mario had called from county jail many times, hoping someone could show up to his hearing. It looked good in court if the judge could see he had family support. Juan's father, he had to work, and his mother wasn't mentally strong enough to leave the house. So it would be up to Juan and whoever else he could find to show support. They were brothers, and he wasn't going to let Mario down. So Juan went with his girlfriend Alma, his sister, and a friend. The four of them entered the courtroom. And right away, Juan could tell their presence was not welcome. Juan and his girlfriend and the others were soon asked to step outside of the courtroom by a court officer, where he was told he wouldn't be allowed to watch the proceedings. Here was the younger brother of a suspect in a murder case, a gang murder case. And there was great concern Juan and the others were there to intimidate their star witness. Juan swore he had no idea what they were talking about. Star witness. And he was apparently persuasive enough to be let back into the courtroom. Well, he was allowed back in on the condition that he would give the court his name and his contact information. And Alma, that's his girlfriend, and his sister and the other friend, they did the same. And it was there, in April 2003, that Juan Catalan first clapped eyes on that star witness. Her name was Martha Puebla. Martha was a teenage girl, just 16 years old, but she had a fierce presence. Part of that was her signature look. While other girls liked their hair dark brown and curly, Martha had hers poker straight and bleach blonde. She wore heavy makeup with thick black winged eyeliner and deep matte red lipstick. She was 16 going on 30. At least that was the image she presented out there to the world. Martha, at least police believed, was their only witness to the second murder that took place in late November of 2002. Authorities claimed that Martha was best friends with the victim's girlfriend, and that she was there the night of this second shooting, and that she saw everything. And Martha was there that day to testify that she had indeed seen Mario Catalan that night. And as prosecutors asked her question after question about what happened one November night in 2002, what she saw, who was there, Martha wasn't the witness they were likely hoping for. Most of Martha's answers were forgettable and unhelpful. "I don't know," she said. "I didn't see anything." But there was one question about this murder that would make or break the case against Juan's brother Mario. At one point in these preliminary proceedings, Martha was asked if she recognized the man in front of her, 25-year-old Mario Catalan. And the girl's answer was simply no. She did not recognize Mario Catalan. In that day in court, Juan would later swear, was the first and last time he saw Martha Puebla. And he left court that day, hoping, perhaps naively, that this whole thing would be over. They wouldn't have enough evidence, and the case would be thrown out, and his brother would go free. Juan had no idea that both he and Martha, they had targets on their backs, their fates intertwined, and in just a matter of days, both he and Martha Puebla will be fighting for their lives.